Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Fire Daimyo Makes Naruto 5th Hokage Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The council room felt tense as everyone was facing a hard time ahead. Orochimaru's assault on Konoha did more damage than it should have. The death of Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage, being among that damage. We plan on continuing with other countries to counter the threat posed by Orochimaru. He will not get away with this injustice. Homura mentioned, making clear his intentions on the matter at hand. The one from the financing department in the Land of Fire stood as he addressed the matter. After what's happened to the village, the Land of Fire will do anything it can into getting Konoha rebuilt, but first we need to set up a considerable amount of budget and then take into account the strain on the other countries as well. Danzo in particular, raised his head and showed his uncovered eye, gleaming in the sunlight. The other ninja of the room didn't sit well with that, especially the two remaining from the old days, Homura and Kaharu. They knew what he would do, and that made them nervous. There are other important issues to be discussed, such as who will be the next Hokage. Hiruzen was killed by Orochimaru and thus we need another Hokage. Danzo said in a somewhat faked sad tone, but the two elders could hear the sincerity of it underneath. The man had lost his greatest rival and oldest friend, and they were sure he had grieved before coming there as they did. All of the people in the room remained silent. The Fire Daimyo merely sat back in thought and crossed his arms. My lord, we can't decide on a plan for the village when we have no leader. Besides, the destruction of Konoha was partially due to sand. Kaharu said as she spoke to the Fire Daimyo. The Fire Daimyo sighed as he pretended to fan himself. I'd normally choose Jiraiya. I like him, but he'd never do it, the Fire Daimyo said in thought as he looked at the battle records once more. It was then a name caught his eye and he began reading the records with closer and more critical eyes. Seeing Danzo was about to speak, Shikaku intervened, clearly seeing the schemes of the old war hawk. I nominate Kakashi Hatake, Shikaku said quickly as Danzo gave him a stone-like look that was his equivalent to a glare. The others seemed impressed with the nomination as murmurs and whispers went around the council chambers talking about the situation. He's well known, strong and respected. Minato was even younger. A councilman then turned to Shikaku. Who was his teacher? The Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze. Shikaku replied in a calm voice as he laid his head on the table. Hook, line, and sinker. They all seemed impressed again. Ah, Kakashi who was taught by the Yondaime, who was taught by Jiraiya, and he was taught by the Sandaime, it would be a fine selection for the seat of Hokage. One of the councilmen exclaimed. The Sandaime's teachings have as good as destroyed the village. Orochimaru was once Sarutobi's pupil. Danzo said heatedly as they all turned to him. Everyone turned to Danzo who seemed to have opposed the idea, but before he could make headway, it was then that he was cut off. The Sandaime was never wrong in his teachings. Homura bit back at Danzo as they glared at one another. The Anbu commander looked at Danzo, still fully dressed from mask to shoes. You were responsible for this, Danzo, and I would be damned if you were to become Hokage. You were the one that let Orochimaru roam free in Konoha. You and your root were the ones that didn't stop him. You are in part to blame on Orochimaru's action. The Anbu commander said as he settled back in his chair. Unlike the previous commandeer, who had been killed in the invasion, he wasn't afraid of the old war hawk. Everyone seemed quiet at that bit of information and Danzo shifted slightly as all eyes were on him. Shikaku seemed to grin as he held his head down. Haji had a point. That's true, your root Anbu should have stopped them. You should have intervened in Orochimaru's actions, which concerned internal affairs of the Land of Fire. Do you have any explanation on this, Danzo? Shikaku asked with a hidden smirk as Danzo sat stone still. No, I had believed in the strength of our Anbu forces and Jonin to deal with Orochimaru as I didn't want him to know of my roots still being around, Danzo said convincingly, but all the clan heads, senior ninja, and elders knew that was a lie. The fire daimyo merely raised an eyebrow at this, but he never took his eyes from the records and reports he was reading. Well now, those are pretty strong allegations, and it seems we can't turn Danzo into Hokage, for it will cause such a public outrage if word of your involvement, or uninvolvement as it were, gets out. The daimyo said as Danzo fumed and glared heatedly at Shikaku. Danzo then sat back and started scheming. To this Shikaku smiled, as he leaned back and let the progress of a new Hokage take place. Homura and Kaharu looked at each other and smiled with inward sighs of relief. The daimyo then set aside the records and reports he had been reading as he was done with them. He leaned forward, placed his elbows on the table and laced his hands together as a smirk appeared on his face. I think I may have an idea of who is to become the next Hokage. It'll be, the daimyo started and everyone's eyes grew wide at the person he had chosen. In the middle of the Leaf Village. Achoo! Naruto sneezed as he was walking down the road. He looked around and shrugged his shoulders as he made his way to the training field for more training. Someone must be talking about me, Naruto said as he began to run down the street in his excitement for training. In that very moment, the wheels of fate began turning again, its gears shifting to start an event that will be remembered for all of the people of Konoha. Oh baby, I'm tellin' ya, you gotta love the Leaf Village. The girls here are off the charts. Jiraiya said happily as he was using his telescope to peek at women. It was then he sensed two people behind him. Still playing the buffoon, I see, Homura said as he and Kaharu had finally found Jiraiya. Jiraiya chuckled nervously as he began to put his telescope away and turned to them. Just doing a little research, so, old man Homura and Kaharu-sensei, what could you two scholarly advisors want with me? Jiraiya asked in all seriousness. Don't waste our time, you should know perfectly well what this is all about. Homura stated. Come on, why the long faces guys? From what I heard, talks with the Sand Village went off without a hitch. Jiraiya said with a shrug. The Sand Village stated publicly that Orochimaru was the cause for all of this, and has offered their complete surrender to us, but that is not what this is about. Homura said. They then told him of the things they were doing to control the situation, but then came the part Jiraiya didn't want to hear. But first, we need a strong and trustworthy leader. Kaharu said as Jiraiya sighed. Look guys, I don't know why you're going through the trouble of explaining all this to me. Now if you don't mind, I've got. Jiraiya said as he pulled his telescope back out, but was cut off by Homura. I think you'll be interested in what we're about to say, especially since it concerns you. Homura said quickly and in a stern tone. This village needs the Godime Hokage immediately, Homura started as Kaharu finished for him. And yesterday, at an emergency meeting, with the Lord of the Land of Fire and Shinobi Council present, it was decided, we chose, Kaharu was saying, but Jiraiya cut her off. Oh, I don't know, it's not up my alley to become Hokage, ya know. Got spy networks and agents to run, so can't do it. Jiraiya said as quickly as he could. He never wanted to become Hokage, it was just, not his thing, ya know. Don't worry, we don't want you. Homura said as Jiraiya fell over. Okay. Then who, and why come to me? Jiraiya said as he tried to think of the poor sap they wanted to be Hokage. We came to you because you are close to the one the Fire Lord has chosen, and from the things we've heard, this person would like to hear this from a friendly voice rather than an Anbu summoning them to the council chambers. Kaharu said as Jiraiya struck a thinking pose. Okay. Who's the poor sap I mean, lucky and honorable bastard I mean guy? Jiraiya said as the two elders' sweat dropped at him. It is Naruto Uzumaki. Namikaze. Homura said as Jiraiya's eyes grew wide. His face then became stone serious at the mention of Naruto's true last name, while Homura and Kaharu were shocked Jiraiya could look that serious. Naruto? Why Naruto? Jiraiya asked more seriously than he ever had in his life. He'd kill for that boy. True. During Naruto's early life he wasn't around, but when he came back he promised himself to be damn well sure to make up for it. He was just glad Naruto had turned out far better than what he would or could have been had he been around. If Jiraiya was around with the things he heard civilians say back then, well, Konoha would have been a toad's footprint in the dust. The Fire Lord believes the boy to be the perfect choice as Hokage, and we agree. Young Naruto has the same personality as the Shodai and Nadaime Hokages. He also has the same upbringing of Hashirama-sensei did when he was small. Our fathers used to tell us stories of that time and we believe Naruto to be perfect for the Hokage title. Koharu said with a smile as Jiraiya watched her and Homura closely. If they had any evil plans for Naruto, then he'd deal with them, himself. Also, Naruto is almost exactly like Hiruzen was at that age. He, like Hiruzen, is also a fervent believer in the will of fire, which all Hokages were, in this respect. Naruto also has an unstoppable determination and drive which strongly impacts the lives around him. Even his enemies had been affected by his empathy, as even that Sangenin, Tamari has said to refer to the boy's amazing charisma as a unique power that allows him to change the worldly views of others. Homura stated with a smile on his face as Jiraiya's face showed nothing but pure shock. Jiraiya was absolutely and utterly floored. He had never really seen the two elders smile just from talking about a person's Anbu file information before, especially one younger than them. Hell, they used to frown or be stone-faced permanently when they talked or even spoke of Minato. Damn, Naruto really could change people for the better. Even though many of the people we've spoken to so far have called Naruto hyperactive, impatient, impulsive, and inattentive, we have also heard that, however, when the situation calls for it or when someone is in trouble, Naruto can be very serious, intelligent, and will instantly try to come to their aid. Those are great qualities of a Hokage. He may be young and inexperienced, but we have a plan to remedy that. Koharu said as Jiraiya sighed and nodded, knowing he would be part of the remedy. Fine, I'll help, but on one condition, Jiraiya said as they began to talk more on the subject at hand. With Naruto, a few hours later, Naruto was stripping himself bare trying to find his ramen ticket as Tsuki sighed. Come on Naruto, you can have this one on the house, but next time don't forget your ticket or money. Tsuki said as Naruto gave him the biggest smile he could. He gave Naruto a fresh, steaming hot, bowl of miso ramen. Thanks, old man Tsuki, you're the greatest. Naruto exclaimed happily. Don't worry about it. Just be sure when you're Hokage, you make ramen the official dish of Konoha. Tsuki said with a chuckle as Naruto chuckled as well. Sure thing. Everyone should know the greatness that is ramen. Naruto exclaimed as he began eating. After about 5 minutes he was about done when Jiraiya came in and sat next to Naruto. Pervy Sage, I didn't know you liked ramen. Naruto said as he finished. Jiraiya chuckled and ruffled Naruto's hair with a smile. I do, but not as much as you. In fact I'll buy you another bowl, to celebrate. Jiraiya said happily and with a laugh as Naruto was confused, but happy with more ramen. Jiraiya paid Tsuki for Naruto's last bowl and another for both of them. Celebrate what, pervy sage? Naruto asked, but Jiraiya only chuckled and ruffled his hair again. That's a surprise for later, my young apprentice. Jiraiya said as Naruto shrugged and began to eat the ramen Tsuki had placed in front of him. You're just like Kushina and Minato, when ramen is around you don't care about anything else. Jiraiya thought as he watched Naruto eat and then began his own bowl. Later. Come on you old pervert hermit, what's going on? Naruto yelled as Jiraiya had brought him to the Hokage tower. Jiraiya merely laughed some more as he walked in front of Naruto. As a wise sage once said, all things are revealed in time. Jiraiya said as he could barely contain his excitement. Now it was 2 of his students who had become Hokage. Take that Tsunade, and she said he'd never be a great teacher when he was training Minato, but her mouth was shut tight as his Hokage ceremony. Ha, Ha. Alright Naruto, we're here, the place where your destiny is changed for the better. Jiraiya said as he gestured to the council chambers door. The Anbu guards bowed to them as he and Naruto walked past them. Naruto was still as confused as ever, but he could tell this was going to be something. Naruto and Jiraiya walked into the council room, only to see all the sensei, the clan heads, and all other important figures of the village, including the fire daimyo. Naruto looked around, trying to remember everyone he had pissed off and half the people he didn't even piss off from this month. He saw Guy, Asuma, and Kurenai sensei. He knew Kakashi sensei was out on a mission today. He saw Hiashi, Choza, Tsume, Inoichi and Shikaku clan heads. He saw Homura, Kaharu, and Danzo Konoha elders. He saw the Anbu commander along with Ibiki and Anko. He continued to look around and saw that no one of his age group was there, which made him quickly assume that it was something very important for all these people, each of who was important to the village, to be here. What's going on here? Naruto asked with a serious face. He knew he couldn't be anything but serious around these kinds of people. You were right, he can get serious in a heartbeat. Choza commented to Homura as the older man nodded with a small smile on his face. Naruto Uzumaki, student of both Jiraiya of the Sannin and Kakashi Hatake, the one responsible for truly defeating the one-tailed Shukaku and foiling Orochimaru's plot, I, Lord of the Land of Fire, appoint you as the Godime Hokage. The daimyo said as Naruto's eyes grew wide with each word. Why me? Was the only thing Naruto could seem to ask as the daimyo chuckled. You have proven that you are strong and dependable. You've shown that will of fire Sarutobi used to talk about. The people in this room have not one bad thing to say about you. You have the charisma and strength needed to lead. I think you're perfect for the job. The fire daimyo said as everyone around, except for Danzo clapped afterward. I still don't see why me. Why not Kakashi sensei, or Jiraiya sensei, or even Shikamaru? Naruto said as the daimyo walked up to him and ruffled his hair. He didn't understand why he was arguing, but he knew that being Hokage was something that needed the right leader, so that couldn't be him yet. Each of the people you've named was considered, but in the end you were the best choice. Also, you're young, so there are many things you can learn still. You want to learn, unlike what I've read on that Shikamaru. The daimyo said with a broad smile and much confidence. But I'm still a genin. There's no way. Naruto started but was cut off by Hiashi. The appointment of a Kage needs not to be ranked, Naruto-san. Chunin, like Sarutobi-sama have become Hokage, so why not a genin for that matter? It is all about discernment, Naruto-san. Hiashi said as he gazed at Naruto with a small smile. Naruto had helped him regain his nephew and make his family closer than it had ever been, so if Naruto needed anything of his clan, they did without hesitation. The others of the room looked at Hiashi in shock, mainly because the man never gave anyone words of encouragement, even if his words were very discreet and hidden. With that being said, the fire daimyo smiled and looked toward Naruto, who remained silent with his head to the floor in thought. Will you accept the position, Naruto Uzumaki, or should we call you, Hokage-sama? The fire daimyo asked with a brighter smile. Naruto stood still contemplating the offer. He thought he couldn't be Hokage now. He knew for a fact there were plenty of ninja who were stronger than him right now, but he was to become Hokage, the strongest of Konoha, the ideal figure of a shinobi, but if this is what needed to protect the people, then so be it. He would protect those precious to him, just as Haku wanted him. I accept, Naruto said, with his head raised and fire burning in his eyes. Some of them were taken back by the overwhelming conviction in his eyes that promised his 110% on the job. They all smiled, even Danzo almost cracked a smile, as they saw him and his determination. They saw the will of fire in his eyes. All right then, but there are a few things you should know if you are to be Hokage. The fire daimyo said as he motioned for Jiraiya to step forward. Naruto was confused as Jiraiya got on a knee to be eye level with him. He had a saddened expression on his face, and Naruto had a bad feeling about it. Naruto, there have been many times in your life where people have deceived you, lied to you. I was one of those people, we all were, but on this day and all days forth, there will be no more lies and deceit. We'll give you the truth, no matter how hard it is for you to handle, that I promise you. And we'll start right now, Naruto, I'm your godfather. Jiraiya said as Naruto was confused and shocked at first, but more shocked than confused. I know this is all to handle, but it isn't over yet, so stay strong until the end, and you'll be a greater man and person than any of us in this room, okay? Jiraiya said calmly to Naruto as he nodded his head. I know you've asked Sarutobi-sensei who your parents were, and he told you he didn't know, but he did. The reason he didn't tell you was because of the very thing you hold, the Kyuubi. He feared that you'd grow to hate others because of it and end up like that kid Gaara. He also feared you'd hate him, and he just couldn't bear that, so he decided we'd be able to tell you when you were a Jonin or 18 years old. Well, we break that poor decision today. Jiraiya said as Hiashi stepped up. Jiraiya-sama, if it is not too much to ask, I'd like to be the one to tell Naruto about his mother and father. Hiashi said as Jiraiya nodded and moved over for Hiashi to kneel down to be leveled with Naruto. Naruto promised himself to remain quiet until everything was said. He owed that much to his grandfather figure. Even though the old man had lied to him each day, he was still the closest thing to family Naruto had back then. Naruto, I know we may not know each other well, but I knew your father and mother very well. I won't kneel here and tell you of what great people they were, because that could take all night and day, so I get straight to the point. Your father and mother were Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage. Your true name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Hiashi said as Naruto cried silent tears. He now knew his family didn't abandon him. But that led a question in his mind, to which Jiraiya predicted. Naruto, the reason your father sealed the Kyuubi inside of you is because he could never ask another to give their child if he could not give his. He sealed the Kyuubi into believing you were the only one to be able to carry such a burden, and not hate those around you. And I know he was right. Jiraiya said as Naruto sobbed silently at hearing his father's conviction and confidence in him. Your mother was a great woman herself. In fact, I believe your personality is almost exactly like your mother's, aside from the confidence, potential, and determination you get from your father. She was a beautiful woman as well. Although, she had a quick temper, loved ramen more than her husband's life, and was a loud motor-mouthed, Hiashi said with a chuckle as he remembered the old days. I was on a genin team with your father, and Tuki the ramen chef. We were trained by Jiraiya-sama as genin and then your father continued training under Jiraiya-sama. Your mother was trained by Tsunade-sama, another of the 3 legendary Sannin, along with my wife, Hime Hyuga, and Sasuke Uchiha's mother, Makoto Uchiha. Hiashi said as Naruto looked a bit shocked that old man Tuki had been trained alongside his dad. Was Tuki as powerful as Hiashi or his dad then? Naruto, you should also know that you're from 2 clans, the Namikaze and Uzumaki. Both of which you are the last of. So, you'll need to have a harem to revive them. We know it may be difficult. Hiashi started nervously, faked nervousness, but was cut off by Jiraiya who snorted in disbelief. Jiraiya then wrapped an arm around Naruto's shoulder as if he was some kind of car salesman. The women of the room growled at him as, Naruto, my dear boy, you have a golden opportunity. You get to have multiple women who'll all marry you. Multiple women, Naruto. You need at least 4, but the sky's the limit on how many you can have. I'd kill to be in your shoes, but remember Naruto, only chose for love and nothing else. Oh, and not that girl Sakura, she's just all wrong for you. A great sister or friend, but wrong for a wife. Jiraiya said as Naruto nodded his head. He loved Sakura, but not like that anymore. Maybe he could give Hinata a try. She was always nice to him. Also, the Namikaze and Uzumaki clans had bloodlines, but you'll need your clan scrolls for that. Other than that, I believe we've covered everything, so Naruto, do you have anything to say? The daimyo asked as Naruto dried his tears with his sleeves. When his eyes were dried, the others gasped as the burning fire in them was brighter than ever. They all smiled at him as he smirked back. Just one. Let's get started. Naruto was in the Hokage office, his office, with shadow clones running about doing all the work that had piled up while Homura and Koharu were instructing them on what to do. The real Naruto was reading through B rank and higher mission reports and placing them in two piles, success and failure. He was glad to see that only 3 of the 200 reports he had read were in the failure pile. It was then his secretary walked into the fray of clones and papers. Hokage-sama, Danzo-sama is here to see you, should I send him in? She asked as she looked around. All the clones started organizing the papers better and put them away in a matter of seconds when Naruto nodded. The secretary left the room as Homura and Koharu turned and walked toward Naruto. I don't know why you accepted to meet with him, Hokage-sama. He'll only try to play for power. Koharu said as she stood in front Naruto's Hokage desk while Homura nodded beside her. I thought that as well, but there was a man like Danzo once. His name was Zabuza, and he believed everyone was a tool to achieve his goals, but in the end he learned they weren't. I think Danzo and him are a lot alike, so I think I know how to deal with him. Naruto said as Danzo came walking in like he owned the place. The clones worked in silence as he entered the room. Having shadow clones do the work, while the real you has meetings. Impressive young Naruto, given the shadow clone's ability to send information back to the original. Danzo commented as he watched Naruto like a hawk. Naruto was shocked by the bit of info, but hid it under a yawn. He'd have to remember that for later. Yeah, we've been doing a lot of work since early morning, but we've just about finished. Anyways, what did you wish to see me about, Danzo? Naruto said as he leaned forward in his chair. How do you plan to rebuild the village as it now falls to you, Naruto? Danzo said with a smirk on his face as he watched Naruto. He refused to call this boy Hokage-sama. The other 2 elders caught the lack of respect, but Naruto waved it off. I've sent out a message to Wave, and they have said they're not only sending aid and people to help us rebuild, but also an alliance treaty at seeing my signature as the new Hokage. Naruto said coolly as Danzo almost blinked at that. We have not even announced your ascension to the village, or the civilian council yet. Also, what will you do about Orochimaru? Danzo said as Naruto was visible in thought over that. The 2 elders merely stood there, watching things unfold, as Danzo tested Naruto's ability to lead. There's not much we can do. I mean, Orochimaru is one of the Sannin, so nothing short of a Sannin can stop just him, and as the only Sannin we have is Jiraiya-sensei, then we can't do anything but wait until the perfect time to strike. Naruto said as they all thought of that. It was true that Orochimaru could only be stopped by people of his equal and they weren't about to send Jiraiya alone, so there really was nothing they could do. Also, we'll need to send more of our ninja out to show the other lands that Konoha is still stronger than them, so I'll be taking control of your root ninja. Naruto said calmly as the others looked shocked, especially Danzo. How did you know about my root Anbu? Danzo asked as Homura and Koharu wanted to know as well. Naruto rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment as all eyes were on him, like a kid caught doing things they weren't supposed to. Well, ya see, I noticed that on the registry we have 500 ninja who were counted alive in the village as of this morning, but we have a total populace count of 1,100 as of today. So, I looked over the civilian registry count and we only had 300 people classified as civilians. I then read through the hidden registry and found that you have a root program of ninja who make a total count of 300, which makes up for the imbalance in the numbers. Also, your program is listed under the Hokage's signature, so I can take command of your operatives at any moment I chose. Naruto said, slightly embarrassed that he was put on the spot, but the others were wide-eyed. Naruto, the 13-year-old Hokage, had caught and cornered Danzo, the 68-year-old war hawk, where not even Sarutobi or anyone else had. Danzo did the only thing he could after hearing that. I'll have them ready for your command as soon as this meeting is over. Danzo said as he was still stunned. His respect for Naruto had grown in just that small reveal of simple intelligence that everyone else had overlooked. Thank you, Danzo. Now is there anything else you need? Naruto said as he leaned back in his chair. Danzo shook his head to get out of his daze as he gazed at Naruto with a far more watchful eye. Yes, I am still concerned about your ideology with regards to our village and the ninja world in particular. Danzo said as he and the other elders watched Naruto. To them it was like watching a heated battle, cat and mouse, and for once in their long ninja lives, they couldn't tell which was the cat and which was the mouse. I see. You wanna see if I can make the tough decisions when it comes to the village and others as well. Well, have no fear, because even I know when some threats need to be put down. I'll do what is needed of me, because I accepted this title to protect this village, and I'll do that even if it causes my heart 100 pains. Naruto said with conviction as Danzo nodded, his respect growing just a bit more. Homura looked to Koharu as they grew worried that Naruto would be as they feared Danzo would have been. Danzo turned and walked to the door, and was about to leave when Naruto spoke. Oh, and Danzo, that's Hokage-sama to you, because you should know that I lead this village now, and those who can't show the proper respect or who stand in the way of peace and justice, can be dealt with as well, right? Naruto said as a chill went through Danzo's spine at the ice in Naruto voice as he said the last part. Danzo didn't turn back, but nodded all the same. Of course, Hokage-sama, Danzo said as he walked out and closed the door gently. He now knew that Naruto really was the perfect choice as Hokage. That meant since Naruto was only 13, that he still had plenty of room to grow. Danzo shrugged as he was alone in the hallway. Since I can't become Hokage now, maybe I'll stand for assisting the new Hokage, but how? Danzo mused as he walked from the building. Maybe he'd be more than what people thought of him, maybe, he'd be greater. With Naruto. Naruto sighed loudly as the door to his office closed and he sunk into his chair. His once calm and stone-like face gave a huge grin as he looked at his two advisors. So, what did you think of tough guy Naruto? He said as they looked shocked. That was all just an act. Koharu asked as Homura chuckled a bit along with Naruto. Yeah, I saw Gramps do it to some ninja who were arguing over a mission report. He said that sometimes you gotta be tough and show people you're not too kind. Then he said to never let it take away from the kind spirits we all have. Naruto explained as Koharu gaped like a fish. I thought I recognized Hiruzen's kind king, evil ruler mask act. Hokage-sama, you're a natural. Homura said with a smile as he regained his composure. He was old, and Naruto was just what the old needed reminders of, the good times they had in their youth. Koharu had to chuckle a bit as she finally remembered having been with Hiruzen when he came up with that. It was nice to be reminded of the good times they had with Hiruzen, with his death still fresh in everyone's mind. Naruto was so much like he was back then. Yeah, well, he was a great Hokage, I'll miss him, but I'll keep his memory alive by wearing that hat and those robes over there when I'm announced. Naruto said as he pointed to his Hokage hat and robes on the coat hanger by the door. Some of the clones started dispelling and Naruto's mind ran a mile a minute. Whoa, Naruto said in childlike wonder at the flood of memories from his clones. Why don't we get out of the office for a bit? I'm starting to see why Hiruzen tried to find every reason he could out of here. Homura said as he looked around the office when they had nodded. They had been working since 5 a.m. and now it was almost noon. If it wasn't for the clones, that paperwork could have taken weeks, if not months. Alright, I still need to be back here to talk to Pervy Sage at 1 p.m. though. Send an Anbu to get me if I'm not back by then. Naruto said as the last of the clones dispelled. He rubbed his head and ran out of the office as the two scholarly advisors chuckled softly at seeing him do so. He's full of life, isn't he? Homura said with a small smile as Kaharu nodded with a small smile of her own. That he is Homura-kun, that he is, she replied as they took their leave of the office as well. At Team 7's meeting spot. Where's Naruto Baka? He's late. Sakura screeched as Sasuke covered his ears. I don't know. Just like I didn't know 5 minutes ago. Sasuke yelled back at her as she gave an embarrassed look and a mumbled apology. Sasuke merely grunted and returned to brooding, but then he saw someone. There's your Dobi, Sasuke said as he pointed to the running Naruto coming their way. Naruto stopped skidding across the bridge and came to a stop. Naruto Baka, where have you been? Sakura yelled as she was about to hit him across the head, but Asuma had her hand in his grip as he and Kakashi flashed onto the scene. He gave her a stern look that she had never seen on him before. I don't think that's such a good idea, Sakura. Kakashi said with an eye smile as Asuma released her from his grip and she rubbed her wrist. He had a real tight grip on it. Almost as if he was about to snap it. Naruto, shouldn't you be helping out the village? Like a Hokage would? Asuma asked in a sort of code as Naruto shook his head. I've got an hour before I have to meet the pervy sage, and then I can go back to helping. Naruto replied as he understood what Asuma was asking. Sasuke narrowed his eyes as he tried to understand what they were talking about, but he couldn't. Naruto Baka, we've got missions to do. The Shinobi Council has taken over until a new Hokage is appointed. You can talk to that old creep later, you idiot. Now come on, let's go. Sakura said as she moved to grab Naruto, but Asuma grabbed her wrist again and applied pressure. Like Kakashi said Sakura, that's not such a good idea. Naruto, instead of meeting here with them, why don't you go help out around the village? The council has done such a good job of organizing today's missions, that there's actually a shortage of them today. Asuma said as he and Naruto knew that it was really Naruto and his clones who had organized the missions for the day. Naruto nodded and ran back out into the village as Asuma had let Sakura's wrist go and blurred away. Kakashi sighed as he told Sakura and Sasuke that they could go today, but told Sasuke to meet him later while he disappeared like always. Sasuke watched as Naruto and Kakashi left. His eyes narrowed as he watched Sakura rubbing her wrist. Those two were up to something, but what? With Naruto. He had been around the village and spoken to all the Jonin around with each of them giving nothing but good reports. He was then walking down the street when he saw the person he had wanted to talk to all day. Hey, Hinata, Naruto said as he ran to her. She saw him and her mind ran at high speed as to comprehend what Naruto could possibly want with her. Hello, Naruto-kun, Hinata said as she blushed when he was standing in front of her. Hinata, I know we don't know each other well, but I'd like it if you'd go out with me on a date. I mean, you've always been nice to me, and you're always concerned about me, so I think we should get to know each other. Naruto said nervously as Hinata turned bright red and nodded before fainting on the spot. Naruto sighed as he looked around to be sure no one was watching him. He caught Sasuke watching from behind a corner, so he picked Hinata up and carried her bridal style to her clan compound. The guards stopped him at the gate and summoned Hiashi. When Hiashi saw who was at the gate he grew wide-eyed as he rushed to it. Let him in, you fools, it is Naruto Uzumaki. The one who helped our clan grow closer. I apologize as Uzumaki-san as they did not know who you were, or your newest statue. Hiashi said as he arrived at the gate. Naruto only smiled and waved it off as they bowed to him. Hiashi and Naruto caught Sasuke watching them, so they walked into the Hyuga compound so the boy couldn't follow. No need for apologizes or formalities, Hiashi-sama. I'm still just Naruto, Naruto said as they walked into the compound. Pleasant and humble, those are good qualities in a leader, Naruto-sama. Hiashi said as Naruto sighed. What did I just say? Naruto asked tiredly as Hiashi chuckled and patted him roughly on the back. In the immortal words of both your father and your mother, especially her, everything people tell me to do goes in one ear and out the other. Hiashi said with mirth as Naruto chuckled a bit. That sounds like something I'd say. Naruto said as Hiashi nodded with an amused smile on his face. They finally reached Hinata's room and Naruto laid her down on her bed. He and Hiashi then went to the tea room and Hiashi closed the door as seals glowed slightly before fading away. He turned back to Naruto who had a curious look on his face. Sound and identity seals, only Hinata or Hanabi could get in now. Hiashi replied to the unasked question on Naruto's face. Naruto nodded as he and Hiashi sat down. So how goes the recovery? Hiashi asked as he poured tea for Naruto and himself. Naruto took a sip of his tea before replying with a smile. It goes well. The main areas that Orochimaru hit will be cleared of debris by tomorrow. It seems that Wave got their aid here on the double and had arrived this morning from the message I sent after our meeting yesterday. They sent an old friend, from my first C-rank mission, as the head carpenter. His name is Tazuna, have you heard of him? Naruto said as Hiashi nodded with a smirk. Yes, I have, and I've heard of the great Naruto bridge as well. Hiashi says as Naruto coughed a bit from hearing that last part. He named the bridge after me. Naruto said with a raised eyebrow as Hiashi nodded. He had no clue that the people would name the bridge after him. That was just, wow. Everyone knows of you as the savior of Wave, well at least all those who care of news from outside Konoha. Hiashi said as Naruto gave him a look. You mean the clan heads, elite Chunin and higher, but not the civilians or the civilian council? Naruto asked as Hiashi nodded. Yes, I fear the civilians and those on the civilian side of the council have gotten too comfy in their leisure to remember they are not above the rest of the world. Hiashi said as Naruto looked deep in thought. Is that why they weren't at the meeting to appoint me yesterday? Naruto asked as Hiashi twitched a bit, but nodded all the same. Yes, we all know they would have outright opposed you as Hokage, but also, because in times such as these only the shinobi council, the village elders, and we clan heads hold power of the village. You as Hokage lead us all, but remember Naruto, no matter what anyone else says, this village is a dictatorship, not a democracy. You rule the people, all of us, even me, so know that no one is above you, and if they cannot see reason, then they can just as easily be banished, if not worst. Hiashi said as Naruto looked visible in thought. Thanks, Hiashi-sama, I'll be sure to remember that. Naruto said as he was still in thought. Hiashi chuckled and gave Naruto a nudge. Don't be so formal with me. I'm sure the way Hinata stalks you, you'll be calling me father-in-law in no time. Hiashi said casually with a smirk as Naruto spit out his tea and turned to Hiashi with a shocked face. She stalks me. Naruto yelled in disbelief as Hiashi chuckled. Like your mother stalked Minato for those 5 months after he saved her, but that's another story for another day. If you ever want to hear any, I'm always free. Hiashi said a bit too happily and nicely. Naruto blinked as he looked at the bright smile Hiashi had on his face. Paperwork? Naruto asked as Hiashi's face deflated and he nodded quickly with a slight chuckle. I see you've faced Akage and clan head's worst enemy today, but you look far better than Minato did on his first day. Hiashi noted as Naruto sat in a more relaxed manner. Yup, and I've defeated it. It was pretty tough, but I managed to get through about all of this month and next month's forms and request. Naruto said with pride as Hiashi grabbed him by his collar and shook him like a rag doll. How did you do it? How damn it, how? Hiashi asked, in hysterically serious anger that was completely unbecoming of a clan head, as he continued to shake the poor boy's Shadow Sea clones. Naruto said as Hiashi cursed under his breath and made a clone to handle his paperwork. Well, now I really am free all day. Thank you, Hokage-sama, you've now helped me with 4 problems in my life. Hiashi said with a smile as Naruto looked at him in confusion. 4. But that was 2. The bringing your family closer and the paperwork. What else did I help you with? Naruto asked as Hiashi sat up straighter. You've also helped me with my problem of what to do with Hinata. I was worried that I'd have to place the caged bird seal on one of my children, but since Hinata loves you, that won't be a problem. Also, you've helped me realize that I need to spend more time with my family, instead of with the past. I spend so much time reflecting on the past mistakes that it hurt my family, and in the end it brought nothing but more problems. Hiashi said as Naruto's mind was still stuck on the fact Hinata loved him. Naruto-sama, I have but one more favor to ask of you before anything else. I know you have helped me and my family much, but I feel I must ask this of you. Hiashi said, almost begged, as Naruto shook his head of his thoughts. Sure Hiashi, anything, Naruto said, but got the strangest feeling those were the wrong words. Marry my daughter, Hiashi said as he bowed to Naruto, while the latter's eyes were wide with pure shock in them. But neither noticed the door to the room had been opened and 2 figures were standing there in the doorway with shock on their faces as well. Naruto knew he couldn't go back on his word now. He never goes back on his word, so now that he was Hokage, that would mean everything. Besides, Hinata was a kind, caring, and if not a bit quiet and weird, sweet girl. So, he steeled himself as he prepared to do something no one his age should have to. Yes, Hiashi-sama, I'll take Hinata-chan as my first wife. Naruto said with slight confidence as Hiashi sat up straight from his cushion and gave Naruto a smile, and then his face turned to horror as he looked behind Naruto. Naruto was confused and looked behind himself as well, only to see Hinata and Hanabi, just as Hinata fainted with the biggest smile on her face. In the village, Kakashi was standing outside of a normal tea shop reading his book as Asuma and Kurenai came up. Hey guys, you two seem to be getting along well, Kakashi said with a slightly amused tone in his lazy voice. Kurenai blushed and looked away, but Asuma didn't react at all. Idiot, Anko just asked me to pick up some dango for her, Kurenai said as she was still blushing. And what are you doing here besides catching up on your reading? Asuma asked Kakashi as he knew the man wasn't just here by coincidence. He glanced up and down the street, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. I need to buy something to put on a grave, Kakashi said as they both caught on to the lie quickly. Asuma then knew something was seriously wrong for Kakashi to blatantly lie like that, so they all played it cool and followed with it. Plus I'm meeting somebody here, Kakashi said with a glance into the tea shop they were standing outside of. Asuma and Kurenai glanced in there as well, seeing 2 people with black cloaks with red cloud patterns and bamboo hats on. The 2 seemed a bit too relaxed, but even Kurenai could tell they were powerful. Just waiting on Sasuke, Kakashi said as one of the people gripped his cup harder and made his ring strap against it, causing a noticeable noise that made Kurenai jump slightly and Asuma tensed as they all continued to watch the 2. The 2 suddenly vanished into thin air as Sasuke approached Kakashi. Kakashi, it's not like you to be earlier, Sasuke commented as he reached them. Kakashi and the others didn't even turn to him as they looked toward each other. Kakashi gave the 2 Jonin a look, and Asuma and Kurenai nodded as they jumped into the air and blurred from sight. With Naruto, he and Hiashi had just been about to explain things. They were now dealing with a fainted Hinata and an angry Hanabi when an Anbu ninja appeared outside the door. Hokage-sama, urgent news from Anbu Patrol 5. The Anbu said from his knelt position. Hanabi would have seemed shocked if Hiashi hadn't struck a pressure point to the back of her neck, knocking her out, as the Anbu appeared. Hiashi motioned the Anbu into the room as he and Naruto had serious looks on their faces. Hiashi closed the door and reactive the seals as they began. Report, Naruto said as he was in full Hokage mode. He was starting to get used to it as Anbu had been appearing before him since 5 a.m. Anbu Patrol 5 was alerted by Might Guy, who has spotted Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hoshigaki by the river that runs through Konoha. What are your orders, sir? The Anbu ate as he lifted his head to show his bird mask. Bird, I want you and Boar's squad to assist any ninja which are trying to apprehend them. If Guy spotted those two taking a casual stroll through my village, then chances are some Jonin like Kakashi-sensei have too. Naruto said as Bird nodded and Shunshin ed away. Naruto and Hiashi then got up and walked out toward the Hokage tower after making 2 clones to take the girls to their rooms. You're smarter and better at this than your reports and grades ever suggested. Hiashi said with a smirk while Naruto shrugged. What can I say? Grades and reports aren't everything. Naruto said with his own smirk. You know, you're the perfect example that our ninja need. Hiashi said proudly. Thanks, Naruto said quietly as they finally reached the tower, with Jiraiya already outside. I know, now we go greet our guest, and give them a proper Konoha welcome. Jiraiya said with a grin as Naruto and Hiashi grinned back. Well, I did miss my morning training, Naruto said as Jiraiya placed a hand on his shoulder. And I forgot my morning exercise. Oh well, this make up for it. Hiashi said as he and Jiraiya used the Shunshin to teleport to the fight. At the river, Itachi needed to get away and Kakashi knew too much. Itachi didn't want to use the Tsukuyomi on Kakashi, but it was unavoidable. Damn his now blurring eyesight and lack of chakra. Kisame, we'll take Kakashi with us. We don't need the others, get rid of them. Itachi spoke in monotone as Kisame charged forward with his sword, Sharkskin. Sever Leaf Hurricane. Guy exclaimed as he knocked Kisame away with a spinning back kick which held much speed and power. It was then Naruto, Jiraiya and Hiashi arrived. As soon as they had Naruto made a 100 clones and Hiashi blurred forward to strike Itachi with the gentle fist. Itachi evaded most of the strikes, but he couldn't dodge them all due to his blurring eyesight and lack of chakra. Itachi's legs stopped working as Hiashi caught him with 2 palm strikes to each, and Hiashi disabled his whole body from there. Kisame got up and saw what happened, but not before Hiashi and Jiraiya were fast upon him as well. He tried to swing Sharkskin down on them, but each time he did a clone took the hit and Hiashi disabled a part of Kisame's body each time until the blue shark-like man was unconscious. After about 10 minutes the fighting was over and the Anbu came out and took the 2 away. Someone get Kakashi-sensei to a hospital, he looks like crap. Naruto exclaimed as an Anbu nodded and took Kakashi away. Hiashi, call the shinobi council and clan heads for an emergency meeting and Jiraiya, you get the elders. I want to know why Itachi Uchiha has done what he's done, without involving Ibiki or Anko. Kisame however, they'll be needed against him. Naruto said in a stern voice as they both nodded to him before an Anbu took him to his office. You know, he kinda scared me just then. Jiraiya said as Hiashi simply nodded. Yes, just imagine once you start training him. Hiashi said as he went to collect the clan heads and shinobi council while Jiraiya hunted down the 3 ever-elusive elders. Things would certainly be interesting from now on. So, that's it, huh? Naruto said quietly as Itachi nodded his head. Naruto sat back in his chair at the head of the council table and rubbed his temples. It couldn't have been drugs. It couldn't have been money. It couldn't have been him just plain going insane like they were told. No, it had to be that his clan wanted to revolt against the village. Naruto sighed as he lifted his cold gaze at his 3 advising elders, who flinched back from never seeing eyes filled with such cold fire in them. Explain, Naruto commanded as Homura stood up. Hokage-sama, they would have demolished any other ninja we had sent. We also needed someone in the clan, to be a spy, and that was completely loyal to the village. Itachi was the only and perfect choice. Homura explained as his fellow 2 elders nodded. So you ruined the life of one good person, because my predecessor, the 3rd Hokage, allowed the civilian council to control the academy. You ruin Itachi-san's life, because he was willing to kill his family. Are you 3 morons? Naruto spoke as his anger rose with each question. Everyone flinched back at the sheer rage in his tone. They all looked to him as his eyes glowed red and his features became more feral. He then started taking deep breaths and calmed himself down as he returned to normal. I'll need someone to teach me to control the Kyuubi's power. Anyways, Itachi, you are to be our spy into this Akatsuki. Once you have all the necessary information, you are to report back to me, understood? Naruto said as Itachi nodded. Yes, Hokage-sama, Itachi replied in his monotone voice as Naruto turned back to his council. Nara-san, what do you believe would be best in this situation? I do plan to return Itachi to the village, and I'm sure the people will not take well to that, due to the mistakes of my predecessor. Naruto said as he knew the people, shinobi and civilian alike, would hate Itachi almost as much as the civilians hated him. I think the truth would be best, Hokage-sama, since anything else would just blow up in our face later on, like right now. Shikaku said as he laid his head on the table. Naruto nodded his own head in agreement. He would not lie to his people, not like he was lied to. Itachi, what do you know of this Akatsuki as of now? Inoichi asked as Itachi closed his eyes in thought. Akatsuki is a criminal organization of S-class missing nin and is the most wanted group in the entire shinobi world. Their main goal is to collect all of the tailed beasts for their plan of world domination. Itachi said as the others of the room grew wide-eyed and gasped. Naruto unconsciously let a hand rub his stomach as Jiraiya patted his shoulder. Akatsuki, at any given time, is composed of no more than 10 primary members, all of whom are S-rank criminals. Members always work in teams of 2, with the exception of Zetsu, who functions as the organization's spy, and they make use of their unique skills to the team's advantage. Team members must function very well together, or at least stand each other to accomplish their task even though they have mutual problems with each other. The organization is rarely fully assembled though, Itachi said and then paused briefly to let the information sink in. The members of Akatsuki as of now are, myself, Kisame, Deidara of Iowa, Sasori of the Red Sand, Hidan the Immortal, Kakuzu of the Five Hearts, Conan the Paper Angel, Nagato the Fake Leader, Zetsu the Human Fly Trap, and Madara Uchiha the Real Leader. Itachi said with the others gaping and gasping at the names, especially the last. But how? He should be dead of old age by now. Kaharu said with her mouth agape. She remembered that the man was about 38 when she was born, so that would make him 105 years old right now. I think we should all know that in the ninja world, we are to expect the unexpected. Naruto said sagely as he sat back and rubbed his temples. He really didn't need those kind of worries. If what he read from their bingo book pages was right, then not even Kakashi-sensei could take any of them on now. Maybe with some training. Also you should know, Hokage-sama, that Madara was the reason for the Kyuubi's attack on the day of your birth. Itachi said with his eyes on Naruto as Naruto's face showed complete shock. Naruto shook his head, leaving those thoughts for another day. Since we're being brutally honest here, and I did promise I wouldn't lie or hide anything from you anymore Naruto, you should probably know that 2 of the people he mentioned I trained. Jiraiya said while he scratched his head in embarrassment and gave a cheesy grin as Naruto merely raised an eyebrow. For some reason, I'm not surprised. Just tell us which ones and how long ago. Naruto said as he began massaging his temples again. Damn, this was his first real day on the job and he already had crap to deal with. It was Nagato and Conan, but it was back in the Second Great Shinobi World War. They looked after themselves until I found them. I gave them food and taught them how to use ninjutsu so that they could defend themselves. After 3 years of training, I was happy enough with their progress that I returned to Konoha, leaving them to forge their own future as shinobi. Last I had heard they were dead. Jiraiya said with a completely serious face as Naruto sighed. Alright, here's what we're going to do so far. Itachi, you and Kisame will do whatever it is that you do, but be back here on my call. Also, due to the mental stress Kakashi-sensei is in, no one at our hospital can heal him, so first we need to find a healer. since we can't do much about the other stuff that's been brought to our attention, but I still want information on each and every one in Akatsuki. Naruto said as they nodded, and Jiraiya grew a smirk on his face. If it's a healer you need, look no further, 'cause I know the perfect one. Jiraiya exclaimed as Naruto gazed at him weirdly. And that would be? Naruto said as Jiraiya grinned at him. Tsunade Senju, the Slug Princess, and Slug Sannin of Konoha, Jiraiya exclaimed as he did a goofy dance. But she hasn't been back here in ages. She said she'd never return to this village. Koharu said as Naruto looked at her. I don't give a damn if she has or hasn't, 'cause she will. Naruto said as he sat up in his chair. Alright then, it's settled, me and Naruto will head out and find Tsunade. Jiraiya said as the council grew wide-eyed. You can't, he's the Hokage now and he needs to stay in the village. Koharu said as Homura and Danzo nodded. I know that, but he's not going to be announced until everything is calm and done with, besides I still need to start his training and it'll be a good time to do so. Jiraiya said with a small smirk as the elders looked to one another. There's something you're not telling us, Jiraiya. Out with it, Homura said sternly as Jiraiya gave him a grin. Nothing gets past you old fossils. There is a way for Naruto to run the village and travel with me. A blood clone would be able to do so. Jiraiya said as Homura and Koharu looked to one another in uncertainty. A blood clone would be able to. The blood clone could also use the shadow clone jutsu and the information from them would even be shared with the real original. He could also keep up with more training that way. Being able to learn and master things, which would normally take years, in a matter of days, he'd even be able to act as a normal ninja with the blood clone doing the normal work of the Hokage. I say we do it. Danzo mused over as he finally decided to go with Jiraiya's plan. The others nodded after hearing him. Alright then, pack your things Naruto, 'cause after I teach you this jutsu we're out of here tomorrow. Jiraiya said as he disappeared in a plume of smoke. Naruto called a break to the meeting and went to pack his things. He now lived in the Hokage mansion, so he didn't have to far to go to his new mansion from the council chambers. He packed his things and then went back to the meeting once the break was done. Alright everyone, since I'm about to leave the village there are some things we must get straight. While the real me is absent, only elite Chunin and higher will receive missions directly from my clone. Those lower than that rank will receive them from the council, since everyone believes you're giving the missions anyway. Also, I'll be gone for at least 2 weeks, so I appoint Shikaku Nara as head of the council until my return. Danzo, you and Dragon will maintain the route and regular Anbu. Homura and Koharu, you two shall head the civilian council, since they'll try anything to gain power in my absence, mostly because they are unaware that I was made Hokage. The rest of my orders are to act as you always have, with Konoha's best interest at heart, and right now that is a strong face and kind heart. Naruto said in a commanding voice, yet it was still kind and smooth as he smiled at them. Even Danzo and Hiashi cracked small smiles at him. Then Hiashi remembered something. Hokage-sama, what of the Chunin exams? I'm sure Sarutobi-sama had chosen his picks already from the preliminaries. Hiashi said as he stood to address his young leader. Naruto nodded sagely as that was something he forgot. Yes, and I must agree with those he picked, but I will not announce them now. I will do it when I return, as well as my introduction to the village. Is there anything more? Naruto said as he looked around and no one spoke. He called the end of the meeting as Jiraiya came up to him and they walked out. Danzo and Hiashi watched as the two walked out. He just might be the best Hokage this village has ever seen. Hiashi said with a smile as Danzo nodded. I must admit that at first I was opposed to him, but he seems to have what the others lacked. The very reason I wanted to be Hokage in the first place. He has a kind heart, but a stronger mind and sense of judgment. He doesn't let his heart stop him from taking the actions which need to. I realize now what a fool I've been for still lusting for the title of Hokage. If I had been, I would have waged war with everyone, thinking that would be the only solution. It's thanks to a talk I had with him that allowed me to think. Danzo said as Hiashi looked at him. Danzo was smiling, and that was scary. Oh, and what was it he made you think about? Hiashi asked as Danzo looked toward him. He told me he'd do what needed to be done, even if it cost his heart 100 pains. You see, unlike what people believe, I've always done things for the sake of the village, not simply me. My beliefs differed from those of the former Hokages, as I feel that the village should be placed above all else, even one's heart. I didn't hate the previous Hokage's beliefs, but I did think poorly of them. I just preferred to directly eliminate threats through assassination and execution rather than diplomacy and negotiation the others would try, but now, I believe that Naruto has combined the best of both ideals. Putting the village first, but doing it with care. He seems to use his kind heart to help people see his way, but if they don't, he'll deal with them, unlike Hiruzen would have. Hiruzen and the others felt that if things were left alone, they'd work themselves out, but Naruto knows otherwise. He knows that people can be changed for the better, but if they can't, then he knows they don't belong in this world, a world that needs people like him. Danzo explained as Hiashi nodded. He may not have liked Danzo before, but now, maybe he might. That boy really can change people for the better. I just hope it works on Tsunade-sama, Hiashi said as he and Danzo walked out with Danzo nodding to the thought. With Naruto and Jiraiya. Alright Naruto, I'll show you the jutsu now. Jiraiya said as they stopped near the front gate. Naruto nodded as he was eager to learn a new jutsu. Now, before I do, I need to let you know about it first. The blood clone is very much like the shadow clone, except it won't dispel until you dismiss it. It will do everything you would do, even your thought process, and it can use jutsu as well. Now I want you to draw blood from your thumb and make the ram hand sign. Focus your charka as you would for a shadow clone and then go into all the hand signs of a summoning and finish with the shadow clone hand seal. Jiraiya explained as Naruto nodded and did as he was instructed. Ninja art. Blood clone jutsu, Naruto said as a clone popped up next to him in a haze of crimson smoke. Jiraiya looked it over and then punched it into a wall with it forming a crater the shape of its body. Hey, what the hell was that for? The blood clone yelled as he walked out of the crater like it was nothing. Jiraiya looked to Naruto for the answer as Naruto shrugged. I have a high pain tolerance, Naruto said with his shrug. Again, sorry for not being there, kid, Jiraiya said as he knew he added charka to that punch. He wasn't Tsunade, but that could have laid a Jonin ninja out for a week. Like I said on the way here, it wasn't your fault. You needed to watch Orochimaru and the Akatsuki. Naruto said as he waved off the apology. Jiraiya sighed as Naruto turned to the clone. You know what to do, right? He asked his clone as the clone nodded and jumped to the roofs to get back to the Hokage tower. You ready to head out? Jiraiya asked when the clone was out of sight. Yup, Naruto exclaimed with a smile. He was always excited to get out of the village. Plus he would finally be able to get some real training done. The duo of master and apprentice disembarked from the village. Their goal? Find Tsunade Senju and bring her back to the village. With the genin at Training Ground 7, later. Hey, guys, did you know that Naruto left with that old guy Jiraiya a little while ago to go find some Tsunade person? Kiba asked as he reached the spot the others were. The only one who didn't look surprised was Shino. Then again, you could never really tell the expression on Shino's face, or tell how he was feeling, as he always sounded the same. Hinata fidgeted nervously as her face went red, but they all ignored it. Sasuke gave a snort as he didn't care and Sakura followed his every action. Really? Ino asked nervously as she had long since stopped being a Sasuke fangirl. After she heard what Naruto had done to protect his friends, it opened her eyes to the truth about a lot of things. Yeah, I heard on the way here that they left a little while ago. It doesn't matter to me, but I thought his team might wanna know. Kiba replied with a shrug as Sasuke snorted again. I don't care what he does, so long as he's not here to get in my way. Sasuke said as he leaned against a tree. Yeah, that idiot is probably going away cause he tried to be cooler than Sasuke-kun when the sand and sound invaded. We all know Sasuke-kun was the one to beat that demon Gaara. No one gets in Sasuke-kun's way. Sakura exclaimed as Sasuke simply took the credit for the fight when people asked about it. No one would believe the dope would actually win a fight. Why not take some Anbu or Hyuga then too? Shikamaru asked as he, along with Hinata and Shino, knew who Tsunade was. Because Jiraiya was only allowing one person along with him, so he chose Naruto. Don't know why, but he must wanna to teach the dope how to eat something other than ramen. Right, Hinata, Kiba said as he nudged her. She gave him a scary look and he backed away slowly. He turned to Shino, who took a sip of the drink he had brought. Shino didn't say anything, but he and Shikamaru knew something was going on with Naruto. Makes sense. The dope probably can't even spell ramen, Sasuke replied with a smirk as Sakura had hearts in her eyes, but no one else but Kiba paid attention. Do you think there's anything going on between those two? Choji asked Shikamaru as they both noticed Hinata's spike in chakra as she tried to suppress her anger. Who? Naruto and Hinata? Sakura asked as she had overheard them. Hinata, eat bed, and went red-faced as she pressed her fingers together as she tried hard not to faint from what she had heard earlier that day. What would make you think Hinata would love a baka like that? Hinata's a Hyuga clan heir and Naruto's a baka street urchin. She would never like him, he's trash. Sakura exclaimed as everyone, but Hinata and Ino, sighed at her, even Sasuke. They all knew Hinata had loved Naruto for a long time and Sakura was more oblivious than Naruto to that fact. Hinata and, surprisingly Ino, growled lowly at her for talking about their man. Wait. Ino backtracked, our man. Since when did that happen? I mean Naruto's cute, kind, sweet, goofy, exciting, okay, it's official, I just started falling in love with Naruto. I mean, he is a great guy after all, but I couldn't do that to Hinata. I couldn't just steal her man, even if I did want him now, I'll just tell Hinata how I feel, and see what happens. I'm sure Hinata could help me and I could help her, but I'll tell her later. Ino thought as she looked at Hinata and then sighed as she resolved herself to do what needed to be done. Shikamaru and Shino, of course, were silent on the matter. The two knew Naruto and Hinata had, at the least, some kind of relationship by the way Hinata was acted, but they weren't going to tell anyone. Shikamaru was just too lazy to do it, as it would cause him a good amount of grief. And Shino, well, he just didn't talk a lot. Although when they saw how Ino was acting they had raised eyebrows as they knew Naruto was gonna be one unlucky bastard if those two had a cat fight while he was gone. Itachi just stood on top of the tree across the clearing as he had been watching his brother. He wondered how often his brother smiled or laughed these days, but he could plainly see he didn't. Itachi frowned and narrowed his eyes at Sasuke as he knew his brother took the road he didn't want him to. Damn it Sasuke, why aren't you what I expected you to be? You were supposed to hate me, and try not to be like me. You were supposed to want nothing to do with power, and only want to live, to find love, to kill me and be done with it. Why can't you see that, foolish little brother? Itachi said as Kisame blurred next to him. Time to go catch up with Hokage-sama and Jiraiya-sama. They need the info I have on Madara. Kisame said as he stole a glance at the group of genin. He wondered how long it had been since he and Zabuza had been like that, except those kids were normal. I thought you said you weren't helping them. You said you'd never betray your Mizukage. Itachi said in his normal monotone voice as he continued to stare at his little brother. I did, but then I learned of what Madara did to Naruto-sama. It's kinda like my childhood, and I'd be damned if I don't follow the kid. He took that kinda pain way better than I ever did, and he came out still kind and happy. I think I want to see how he does it, After my interrogation, Ibiki told me that Naruto has a way of bringing the good out of people. I wanna see him do it to Tsunade-sama. Kisame said with a small smile that Itachi thought he was imagining. Kisame didn't smile. He smirked and grinned, but never smiled. Itachi nodded as he turned from the genin with closed eyes that snapped open to reveal his active Sharingan. Fine, I think I want to see this power as well, Itachi said as he and Kisame blurred from the treetop. Sasuke looked over at the treetop, and could have sworn he saw his brother, but he saw nothing now that he was really looking at it. Maybe it was just his mind playing tricks on him. He then remembered what he had read from the secret Uchiha tablet and he rushed away from the others as he remembered he needed to talk to Kakashi. With Jiraiya and Naruto, they had gotten a good distance from the village and were now in Shukuba town. Jiraiya said he needed to find an informant, so he gave Naruto his belongings, along with the young Kage's inheritance, and told him to get a room for the day. Now Naruto was inside the hotel room he had gotten and was reading the letters left for him by his parents. Naruto, if you are reading this message, then I and your father are dead. We asked the Sandaime Hokage if he would watch over you in case we were never able to. It seems that it has come to that. You may not have had the chance to know me, but I am your mother, Kushina Uzumaki. My baby boy, I want you to know that you are a hero, Naruto. No matter what anyone tells you, it is because of you that Konoha still stands today. I'm quite sure that in our last days your father and I have done what I really did not wish to do. You see, Naruto, you hold the Kyuubi inside of you. I'm sure if you're old enough that you know this by now, so I won't say too much on that. Just know that I probably disagreed with your father seal him inside of you, but I'm sure in the end, it was too late for any other choice. I would have probably also disagreed with the Sarutobi-sama when and if he said that you should never be told of the Kyuubi. I'm sure he didn't tell you, but I'm sure you know by now. I love you, Naruto, and so does your father. We know that you are not the demon and that you never will be. You're our greatest little angel. Now on to serious business. Naruto, our people have a strong bloodline, one that will give you power that many have never seen, but you must learn to control it. It is the power to use all 5 of the elemental charkas, along with yin-yang charka. Once you master it, you'll be able to mix them and create sub-elements like wood style. Only truly gifted Uzumaki awaken our bloodline, and rarely would it have been able to be taught. It is a power which can shake the very countries themselves, as you will also have the Kyuubi increasing that power with his own energies, but you must control it, Naruto, as I'm sure you've noticed your crappy chakra control. There is only one way to gain perfect control over this power, but I can't tell you. You must find the answer on your own. You will know, Naruto, I believe in you. Naruto, I'm going to finish this letter now, I hope you read all of it, I had to write fast. The doctors tell me it won't be long now until you're born, but I had to finish this one last message to you. No matter what happens, Naruto, I know that you will make us proud, whether it's in Konoha or elsewhere. I left a few parting gifts, as did your father. You should find them in the boxes. Good luck, Naruto-kun. I know that you will become the greatest shinobi, and may Hokage if the village is as Minato has always said, even though I know that's not the case. Love, Kushina Uzumaki, your mother. Naruto cried as he read his mother's last letter. Now he knew he was always loved by them, now he knew he wasn't what the villagers called him. He found an even greater source of determination now, he would make his mother proud. I did it, Mom, I'm Hokage, but the village is nothing like what Dad hoped it was, I'll make you proud and that's a promise. Believe it, Naruto said as he returned to reading the last of the scroll, which was from his dad. Hiya, Naruto. Your mother told me we're making like a time capsule or something for you, so I put in my favorite jutsu so you can use them someday. In the scroll it contains instructions for the Hiraishin and the Rasengan, 2 jutsu I'm very well known for. The Rasengan hasn't gotten completed yet, but I know you can finish it if I don't. The three-pronged kunai are used in conjunction with the Hiraishin, but not necessary. You can read more from the scroll. Oh yeah, and whatever you do Naruto, listen, to your motor mouth mother, I'm sorry, but I had to. It was so funny in the manga and I loved it. Also, our clan had a bloodline so you might inherit it, but I never did. It's called the Deugan, Great King I. My dad had it before he died, so you could have it too. If you don't then you have the elemental star power of your mother's clan, the Uzumaki. The Deugan comes at a price so be sure to read more in the scrolls. See ya later Naruto. Love. Minato Namikaze, your father, Yondaime Hokage. Naruto cried harder as he realized his father didn't even know what would happen to them all. His mother must have been the only one to think ahead, he sighed as he wiped away his tears and opened the scroll for the Deugan. The Deugan is a dujutsu like no other. While many believed it was inferior to the three great dujutsu, it was not. In fact, it is far more powerful than they could ever hope to be. This level of power along with the Deugan's true abilities however is only known within the clan and so we have let others, including our own village think less of us. What ours know of the Deugan's abilities is that it gives perfect sight, much like a great king sees all within his kingdom, but that is all others know of its power. To read the rest you must gain the Deugan, and that requires a clear mind and the following hand signs. Naruto nodded as he knew exactly what a clear mind meant. He needed to knock himself out after performing the jutsu. He did the hand signs from the scroll and then focused his chakra to his center. He felt himself became sleepy and then he fell back to the ground with a thud. In Naruto's mindscape, Naruto awoke to find himself standing in suddenly a sewer he knew was inside of his mind. He followed the sewer down two long tunnels and around two corners ending up in a huge room the size of his former apartment building. On the far wall was a cage door that went wall to wall and from the floor to the ceiling, it was very intimidating. The only thing that was holding it closed shut, was a seal with the kanji for seal on it. It was then two large blood-red eyes opened and stared at Naruto with kindness and sorrow. Okay, now he was floored. Kyuubi, was all Naruto could say as the puff ball would be yelling at him or calling him a brat by now, but it looked ready to cry. So my jailer has finally discovered his powers and used the king's rest jutsu to help awaken it and the other. Well, I suppose the mirage is over, and I can show you what lies beyond the mask. Kyuubi said with a sigh as he was engulfed in a tornado of flames. When the flames died away in Kyuubi's place was a young woman. She had short spiky orange hair and crimson red eyes. She wore a short black shirt robe with green trimmings, dark pants, with black and white belt that she tied in front with mesh armor underneath. You can turn human, and you're a girl? Naruto asked in complete shock since Kyuubi never did that before. Kyuubi just scoffed at him as she stepped between the bars of the cage and laid a hand on Naruto's shoulder, to which shocked Naruto even more. Naruto, if I wanted to I could turn human on the drop of a Ryo coin, but I needed to keep up my mask of aggression and hatred. Do you honestly think I've survived thousands of years being a giant beast of hate and anger? Hell no, I'm smarter than those humans could ever be. That's why as soon as I was sealed into I saw the same power that righteous man had at once. I saw the power of a king in you, oh yeah, and if I was really bloodthirsty I could have come out at any time and killed you. Kyuubi said with a smile as she patted Naruto's head like a child. Naruto was completely floored by this as he gaped like a fish. He shook himself to regain his composure as he turned serious eyes to Kyuubi. I've felt smarter and calmer than I've ever felt in my life. I feel so serene and I don't remember ever learning that word. You did that, didn't you? Naruto asked with narrowed eyes as Kyuubi gave him a fox-like grin and a mock bow. But of course, I couldn't have my host be a moronic Hokage, could I? Besides, I was going to do it in a couple of months anyway, so I just started earlier, but, back to the reason you're here. You're here to acquire the power of the Deugan. I must warn you that it wouldn't be easy. Thinks are given up to obtain that dujutsu and they know of its true power. If you truly wish to gain this blessed yet cursed power, then follow me. Kyuubi said as she walked out of the room with Naruto close behind. They quickly made it to what seemed like a stone tablet. Naruto was confused as Kyuubi grabbed his hand and placed it on the stone tablet. His body started to glow as he began to slowly fade away. Naruto, don't question things from here on out. Just go with the flow and think before you speak. Also, when you get there and see that man, you'll have to give something up. Be sure to think before you speak, Naruto-kun. Kyuubi said as she kissed his cheek before he completely faded away. In the thought tower, Naruto didn't know why, but he knew this place like the back of his hand. It confused him, but like Kyuubi said, he just needed to go with the flow. He reached the top of the tower, only to see a floating platform to which he walked to. Ah, I see, so you're the next of the Namikaze to come here. What is your name, young one? A voice said smoothly and calmly. Naruto looked up and saw a young man sipping tea and reading a book as he sat lazily in his throne-like chair in the center of the platform. He had short wavy black hair. He wore a black uniform that seemed to be for a school. His purple eyes gazed over Naruto with disinterest and then, excitement as recognition flashed through them. Ah, so it's finally your turn, Naruto. The man said as Naruto simply nodded, not wanting to seem out of the loop on the subject. Good, then you must know why you're here and the requirements of it. The young man said as he sat up straight and gave the presence of a true king. Naruto couldn't help but nod as he felt that anything this man told him would lead to peace and posterity. Good, then allow me to explain who I am. I am Lelouch Namikaze and I was the first of the Namikaze clan. You see, when I first died, the world was created anew and I was revived in this era. I still had the powers of my old life, so I simply used it. I didn't want anyone trying to steal our power or knowing of it, so I made it to where only select members of the clan had it and only they could use it. After being in this world for about 10 years, I joined my clan with a man named Hashirama and his Senju clan. And well, you know the rest of that story. Lelouch said as he stood and walked over to Naruto with a kind smile playing on his face. Now on to what must be done for you to receive my power. You must give up something that you possess, and once you give it up you can never have it back. Lelouch said with a stone serious face. Naruto placed his chin in his hand as he thought it over. Kyuubi said not to question things, so he wouldn't. Kyuubi said to go with the flow, so he would. Kyuubi also said to think before he spoke, and so he was. Now what could he give up that wouldn't seem stupid but wouldn't impair him? Lelouch stared at him with his smile back in place. If what he thought and knew about his descendant was true, then Naruto would make a better choice than he when he was alive. I'll give you my hatred, Naruto said as Lelouch's smile broadened. He ruffled Naruto's hair as he let out a chuckle of amusement. You've passed my test, Naruto, Lelouch said as Naruto grew a bit confused. You see, the only ones who could hope to have my true power were the ones who would give up a dark trait of theirs. There were others who gave up other things, but only those who would give up their negativity could gain my true blessing, and you just so happened to be the first, Lelouch said, trailing off as he thought about the stupidity of his clan. If only it hadn't skipped Minato, and Naruto was Minato's grandson. So here is my truest blessing, the full potential and power of the Deugan, the Kami Deugan. Lelouch said as he jabbed 2 glowing fingers into Naruto's eyes. It didn't hurt his eyes, but his mind was on fire from the sensation. When Lelouch pulled his fingers back, Naruto fainted and fell off the floating platform. Lelouch smiled watching him go down into the inky black darkness of the space. He then went back to his throne and started reading his book again. Waiting another who knows how long for a visitor. Well, at least I have Ika, Lelouch said to himself as he giggled perversely. Naruto's mindscape. Naruto awoke with a bad headache. Kyuubi was over him with a worried expression on her face that turned happy when she saw he was waking up. His eyes fluttered open and she gasped at seeing them. They were a royal blue color as he fluttered them. They glowed slightly as he sat up, keeping them open. You received the blessed eyes of Kami, Kyuubi said more to herself than him. He looked at her as she tried to avert her gaze. Naruto, you must stop those eyes before you use them on me. Just close your eyes and think of your normal ones, she said as he did so with his eyes returning to their cerulean color. Alright, what now? Naruto asked as Kyuubi snapped her fingers and turned into a young man with the same clothes and short red hair. Now it's time for hell, Kit. Kyuubi said as he dragged Naruto to the room they would be training in for the next 3 years, but since it was his mind it would pass in a matter of hours. 3 hours later, outside Naruto's mindscape. Naruto awoke in a cold sweat as he just survived Kyuubi's boot camp of hell and torment. He was far more knowledgeable now, but his mind would never be the same. Kyuubi had trained him in chakra control, some jutsu, and mastering 3 of his 5 chakra affinities, since when being still physical he could still manipulate his chakra the way he wanted to for if he wanted to perform a jutsu. After a year of that, Kyuubi had him studying seals and everything else shinobi. It was a whole another mind year before he could move on to manipulating Kyuubi's chakra. He had finally mastered it when Kyuubi had told him the last thing he wanted to hear. Kyuubi was being drained away. Naruto had converted a large amount of chakra in his training and now Kyuubi would disappear in a year if he couldn't find a body for Kyuubi to transfer into. It was a good thing that in the first and second years he had discovered some interesting things about his bloodline, the Deugan. Now he was face to face with a worried Jiraiya to who he told everything to. Jiraiya wanted to faint after hearing that tale, but he needed confirmation. So let me get this straight. The Kyuubi, who can be a girl who's in love with you, or a boy who's a drill sergeant, trained you for 3 years in your mind. But before that, you gained the Namikaze bloodline Dujutsu, and the one Minato's father had wasn't even the true full power of it. Also, you're the first to receive its true power because you were willing to give up your hatred for others. Jiraiya said incredulously as Naruto nodded truthfully each time. Jiraiya nodded slowly as he fell back, finally allowing himself to faint. Naruto only looked at him, then shrugged as he got his Deugan scroll and activated his eyes to read more on the powers his eyes had. Interesting, Naruto said with a fox-like grin as he read the scroll. Yup, tomorrow's training with Jiraiya would be interesting indeed. The next day, Naruto and Jiraiya had gotten up early to train and then moved to the next town in search of Tsunade. That was why they were in Haskin town. Jiraiya said he and Naruto would be collecting some information there. The only problem was, why do I have to stay here? I'm the Yano now, so why can't I go? Naruto whined as Jiraiya sighed at his actions. I thought you said that you grew smarter. Jiraiya asked as Naruto blinked. I did, but that doesn't mean I'm still not 13, pervy sage. Besides, Q-chan said she likes my childishness. Naruto said with a pout. Well, I don't care for it much. Here, study this jutsu and when I come back I'll see how far you've truly gotten with Kyuubi. If it's good enough, then I'll start teaching you a truly amazing jutsu, the Rasengan. Jiraiya said as he gave Naruto a scroll. Naruto blinked a few times as raised his hand slightly like he was holding a fruit. You mean this? Naruto said as chakra swirled in his hand until it formed a perfect Rasengan. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes as he studied the jutsu. How did you learn this? Jiraiya asked in a serious voice with narrowed eyes. He knew he hadn't even mentioned it to Naruto and the boy knew it already. Jiraiya knew he was supposed to be the only one to know that jutsu besides the boy's father, Minato. I saw it and studied it when you fainted last night. It was in a blood seal scroll from Dad. He had some great tips, hints, and tricks on it too. Naruto said energetically as he formed another in the opposite hand. Jiraiya almost fainted again, but stopped because this time Naruto might learn the Fly Thunder God Jutsu if he did. That year of chakra exercises paid off, don't ya think? Naruto said as he dispelled both Rasengan from his hands. Yeah, well, just study that jutsu, okay. It'll be helpful in future battles, Jiraiya said quickly before he vanished in a plume of smoke. Naruto sighed as he sat down and opened the scroll. Fire style. Small fire stream jutsu. This technique is used as the parent jutsu of almost any fire jutsu used. It was created by Akira Sarutobi and requires no hand seals. Naruto started reading as he sat there in the hotel room. With Itachi and Kisame. We're getting close. I can feel Naruto's chakra from here and it's much stronger and more controlled than the last time we saw him. Itachi said in monotone with Kisame nodded as they strolled into the outskirts of town. Yeah, you're right. It's focused to the point of great chakra control, but it still isn't at mastery yet, although it's definitely more power. I'd say he was at low Chunin in both before, but it seems that he just jumped to Sannin level in 2 days. It's almost as if he's been training for years. Oh well, that'll just make it more fun to have a battle against him. Kisame said with a wide shark-like grin showing his shark-like teeth. Itachi nodded as he too wished to test the limits of Naruto's newfound power. Then let's not make haste, Itachi said as he and Kisame took to the roofs and ran toward Naruto was located. With Kakashi. So Naruto went with Jiraiya-sama to find Tsunade-sama to help me. Kakashi said in an extremely weak voice as he lay unmoving in his bed. The only part of him he could move was his eyes and his head a bit, but that wasn't much. In the room with him were some people, mainly Asuma, Guy, and Kurenai, but also Yugao Azuki and Shikaku Nara. That's Naruto-sama, or Hokage-sama, Kakashi-senpai. You of all people should know how to show the proper respect for the Hokage. Yugao said as Kakashi seemed to simply ignore her. She wasn't sure if he hadn't heard or what, but it made her uneasy about him and his loyalties. Anyways, that's everything from the meetings, and so now all of you are filled in, and Kakashi, show Naruto-sama the respect he deserves. After all, he could just have you killed if he wanted, Shikaku said lazily, but smirked as the little color Kakashi had faded. I'm very respectful of Naruto, but that doesn't mean we should let it go to our heads nor his. I mean, he is just a genin after all. He may be Hokage now, but he doesn't have any of the power to back up the title. I'll admit he may have a few good jutsu, but he lacks the intellect and power to be a proper Hokage. At first I was caught in all the hype that my student became Hokage, but he really can't do it. He's the weakest of my team. Now Sasuke on the other hand, he defeated Gaara, the one-tailed Jinchuriki, Kakashi said as he stared at the ceiling. He was oblivious to the anger and shock of the others in the room. They were the ones who really knew of the battle, mainly because Yugao was the one to witness it. So, Kakashi had been fed that crap the civilian council had spread around. Kakashi, do you mind if I go for a smoke? Asuma asked as he nodded to the others that they would deal with it later. They nodded back as Shikaku and Yugao left in a plume of smoke. Asuma sighed as he sat back down. Kakashi finally, and painfully craned his neck over so he could look at them. I thought you were going for a smoke, and where are Shikaku and Yugao? Kakashi asked as Asuma shrugged nonchalantly. I decided against it since my friend's hurt, and I think those two needed to get work done, so they left as fast as they could. Asuma said as Kakashi nodded at the lies. After talking more for a few minutes, Kakashi had fallen asleep and the others were talking amongst themselves. Shish, Guy said as the door opened to reveal Sasuke. Sasuke took a quick glance around the room and frowned as he walked into it. Why is Kakashi asleep and why is this room full of jonin? Sasuke asked, or rather demanded, as if he was entitled to the answers. Guy had to suppress his anger a bit as he answered the boy. Not much, really, Guy said unconvincingly as Sasuke only became enraged at the obvious lie. What are you doing? What in the world is going on here? Sasuke asked heatedly as they only avoided his gaze so they wouldn't be tempted to kill him. He was their new Hokage's friend and so they would kill him just yet. Just then the door burst open and a random special Jonin came into the room. Hey, is it true that Itachi has returned? And that he's come here to get Naruto-sama? Sasuke had completely missed the sama part as he was stuck on the fact his brother had been in the village and not dead at his feet. The Jonin looked about and his eyes laid on Sasuke. He froze at seeing the last Uchiha. Kurenai called him an idiot as Sasuke ran from the room and toward his brother. He'd kill Itachi this time, and that was a promise.